Hello, welcome to Birmingham, welcome to CTSI Symposium. It's great to see so many familiar faces and all the obstacles you've overcome to get here, whether your nervousness around COVID or whether you've struggled to find fuel. And whether you've found fuel, let me know later. So my name's Wendy Potts, I'm Chair of CTSI Council for this year. When we took a vote with the members earlier this year to decide whether to have a symposium in person, and I'm delighted that we decided to do this, and I can see from the smiles on your faces and just how many people there are here today that you all share with my enjoyment of that. It's 140 years since Trading Standards held its first event. That was in Manchester, and I think Birmingham is a great city to celebrate that 140 years. It was about 140 years ago that Birmingham was declared a city by Queen Victoria. 140 years ago, the Assay Office had already been in existence for 107 years. The Cadbury brothers have been making chocolate for 70 years. Aston Villa have been kicking the ball around for 7 years, and Birmingham City for 6 years. So it's a fantastic city, and I hope you enjoy it. Also wanted to thank the branch, the Midlands branch, who've been super helpful with the stewarding, organising the stewarding. There's a branch gift that they're giving to everybody, and they've been really helpful with local information and local knowledge. So first, we're going to have a video from Lord Lindsay, our new president. When Baroness Crawley stepped down last year, we were delighted when Lord Lindsay agreed to step in as our president. It's always great to have someone in the House of Lords to give the CTSI message. Lord Lindsay can't be with us today. His daughter's getting married. I believe it was touch and go whether he decided to come here or to his daughter's wedding, but he's just sent us a video today. So we're going to be watching that now.
Good morning, friends and colleagues. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 CTSI Symposium and to do so as the CTSI President. It was a distinct honour for me to be chosen for this role earlier this year, and I wish to thank and pay tribute to my predecessor, Baroness Crawley, for her exceptional work as President of the Institute during what has been a challenging period for the trading standards profession. I also want to thank and pay tribute to John Herriman, who was appointed as CTSI Chief Executive shortly after my own appointment this year. John is passionate about consumer protection and the role it plays in supporting the social good. John will speak about his vision for the future of CTSI and the profession on day 3. The past 18 months have provided unprecedented challenges for us all. The COVID-19 pandemic changed the way we live and work so absolutely. Indeed, last year's symposium, which would have been held in Southport, was replaced by the first ever online symposium. It is a credit to you, the CTSI members, and CTSI staff for demonstrating such flexibility by delivering a successful event during what has been dubbed the new normal. But while that virtual event was well received, it was always CTSI's priority to return to an in-person format at the earliest safe opportunity. It speaks volumes how this distinguished profession has protected the UK public across 3 very different centuries as we celebrate the 140th anniversary of the trading standards profession coming together for the first time in Manchester in 1881. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you today due to an important family commitment, but thanks to modern technology, I can speak to you in this digital video format, something our predecessors in 1881 could only have imagined in their wildest dreams. The quick pace of technological change since the 19th century has transformed society beyond all recognition. Whilst these developments have significantly improved living standards, it has also led to many new challenges, calling on entirely new ways of thinking about consumer protection. And the changes seem to arrive faster every decade. Over the last 20 years, the rapid digitalisation of our economy has been at the forefront of a transformation that is so wide-ranging and fundamental that it has been dubbed the 4th Industrial Revolution. According to the Office for National Statistics, just 2.6% of retail sales in the United Kingdom were made online, when these records began in November 2006. This January, online retail sales reached a new high of 36.5%, an extraordinary rate of growth in just 15 years. The new digital economy has opened up countless markets for consumers everywhere, bringing unprecedented choice and competition to everyone. Unfortunately, it has also created opportunities for fraudsters, located anywhere in the world, to enter our lives, mislead us, and even steal our life savings. Indeed, according to the 2021 CTSI Consumer Confidence Survey, over 2.6 million people have lost money to scams in the UK since March 2020, illustrating how dangerous this trend is. Trading standards professionals play a crucial role in the consumer protection ecosystem and in shaping the response to what is now a global threat to UK consumers. Never has international cooperation been so vital when investigating and tracking down those who harm consumers. As always, good consumer protection laws that keep up with the evolving threat dynamic and vigorous enforcement are the foundations for a confident consumer base and flourishing marketplaces, both vital for the UK's economic recovery post-COVID. The UK's exit from the European Union presents both challenges and opportunities that call for the reshaping of consumer protection and the creation of new standards and institutions, some of which is work in progress. In this sense, Brexit is a process, not a one-off event, and negotiations with our friends in the European Union will likely continue throughout this decade. This makes the CTSI Symposium not only an important event for the trading standards profession to meet up and reconnect after what is always a busy year, but also for us all to unite and present a loud and clear voice for trading standards in Whitehall, Holyrood, Cardiff Bay and Stormont during a critical time for consumer protection. This year I was asked to join the board of the Consumer Codes Approval Scheme, CCAS, as its chair, which I happily accepted, complementing my role as chair of the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UCAS. Both are committed to educating businesses about the importance of customer-facing standards and their role in instilling greater trust, confidence and credibility in products and services. I'm happy to report that despite the challenges of the pandemic, CCAS continues to go from strength to strength, with the scheme now boasting almost 80,000 business members with no sign of slowing down. Last year, the scheme protected an estimated £135 billion worth of sales, an upward surge of £51.5 billion on the 29 figure, and I expect our upcoming report, due soon, to reflect further impressive growth in sales protection. Since the scheme's creation in 2015, this huge growth demonstrates the desire throughout much of the business community to improve customer-facing standards, and it is a testament to CCAS's suitability for achieving these aims. This year also saw the relaunch of the CTSI-hosted UK International Consumer Centre, UKICC, formerly known as the UK European Consumer Centre. The centre saw a busy first 6 months of 2021, with demand for its services boosted by UK consumers experiencing Brexit-related issues, such as new customs rules and unexpected delivery charges for the new UK traders, as well as challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. Compared to the prior year, the centre saw a 34.2% increase in its more complex consumer cases over the first 6 months of 2021, which is likely to be in response to changes in UK consumer spending habits, such as the boom in online sales, in part brought about by COVID-19 restrictions. These figures demonstrate the public's sustained need for the service, and CTSI supports UKICC's continuation as a vital organ within the collective body of the UK's Consumer Protection Institute. Earlier this year, CTSI released an infographic that painted a picture of the remarkable work undertaken by trading standards and other consumer protection professionals and organisations across the country during the first few months of the pandemic. One of the institutions that CTSI highlighted is Gateshead Metrology Lab. The laboratory, which focuses on calibrating highly sensitive weighing equipment, played a crucial role in the pandemic response by offering a faster turnaround for its calibration of equipment used in projects aimed at mitigating the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The lab, jointly owned by the 5 councils of the Tyne and Wear region, is one of only a handful across the UK undertaking this crucial work. The decision to prioritise the testing of equipment that could help mitigate the effects of the virus is an example of trading standards, resources and infrastructure being deployed efficiently and effectively in the pandemic response. Above all, it demonstrates how metrology and trading standards resources are at the heart of assisting the pandemic response in ways that are not immediately apparent, and how authorities can adapt these resources swiftly in an emergency. In England, trading standards conducted an estimated 220,000 COVID-19 secure and business closure compliance visits or checks. Of these inspections, trading standards services identified over 35,000 non-compliant businesses. Northern Ireland saw the distribution of 45,000 NTS Wash Your Hands of Coronavirus Scams leaflets via food parcels in partnership with district councils, large supermarkets and charities, whilst in Wales, close to 53,000 business premises received proactive advice on COVID-19 safety compliance. In Scotland, over 66,000 COVID-19 secure and business closure compliance visits or checks were carried out, with just under 13,000 non-compliant businesses identified. The wide range of work in each of the UK's 4 nations highlights the scale and the diversity of approaches across local and regional authorities. Personal protective equipment, PPE, proved vital in protecting key workers from the virus, and trading standards services were at the heart of ensuring this. The East of England Trading Standards Association imports teams increased their surveillance checks at import points and prioritised their work to focus on PPE products, including face masks. Officers undertook frontline checks on products coming through both airports and seaports to ensure that unsafe and non-compliant consumer goods did not enter the UK market. Demand at Stansted Airport increased significantly overnight at the beginning of the pandemic, with double the usual officer attendance required. Over the first 6 months of the pandemic, almost 14.8 million PPE items, including face masks, hand sanitizer and gloves, were examined by teams from Essex, Suffolk and Thurrock, with over 8.8 million PPE products prevented from reaching users in an unsafe or non-compliant condition, the worst items being destroyed at the border. I applaud this absolutely sterling and undoubtedly life-saving work for the benefit of frontline health workers and many others who need the right PPE that is up to the right standards to protect themselves and their patients. Staffordshire also witnessed the steadfast resilience of trading standards professionals, with staff taking up multiple roles across the county. These roles included not only the delivery of food parcels and ensuring vulnerable members of society were protected, but also, during a darker moment of the pandemic, staff were trained up and prepared for mortuary management. The team's resilience shone through, with partnership working across all responders to the virus and with intelligence sharing between districts, county and the police, ensuring compliance and robust enforcement. On advice from the Director for Public Health, enforcers served multiple direction notices on premises where there was a serious and imminent risk to public health, including a hotel, barber shops and a working men's club, in order to prevent the spread of disease. One of the most incredible trading standard stories that came out of the pandemic involves the work of Peterborough City Council in partnership with the local charity Light Project Peterborough. Regulatory services, including a trading standards officer, were called upon to support the local authorities' efforts to house the homeless in Peterborough's hotels to help protect them from the spread of the virus. Their role included handing out food and drinks, room inspections, befriending residents and ensuring they settled in. At the peak of the project, there were 123 homeless occupants. The work has had a tremendously successful outcome, with 80 rough sleepers subsequently accepting offers of more permanent accommodation following this experience. This is the kind of social support that Trading Standards staff have undertaken across the country, demonstrating their profound care and brilliant flexibility, undertaking work far beyond their job description. It is the very definition of going above and beyond. These stories are just a small sample. There are hundreds of them, if not thousands, and I'm sure you will hear many of these stories over the next 3 days. CTSI received examples from every single region of the UK, all of them inspiring, making it difficult for the editors to decide on the small selection that could be published in the infographic. CTSI's role as your professional association is to tell these stories to the world so that the UK government, devolved parliaments and the public understand the full extent of your contribution to the country's welfare. Please share the story of you and your team with us, and CTSI will do its utmost to get your voices heard. Finally, I want to praise your continuing commitment to the CTSI Symposium and to CTSI itself as your professional institute. We understand the hardships that you have borne as a profession during both a tough budgetary climate and the unprecedented difficulties of the coronavirus pandemic. Throughout these challenges, you and your services have stood tall and delivered, something you should all be proud of. I also wish to thank CTSI Symposium's main sponsor, Status International, and our co-sponsors, Civica, Wagtail UK and Truecaller, for their ongoing support of the UK's largest gathering of trading standards professionals. Over the next 3 days, you will hear from some of the most experienced consumer protection experts in the United Kingdom. We can all look forward to learning about the role of trading standards in the UK's economic recovery and in shaping global Britain, the new trends in consumer vulnerability, and the importance of embracing diversity so that the profession reflects the many different communities it serves in the 21st century. You will also find many fascinating seminars conducted by experts in their respective fields. In addition, you will be able to access the exhibition hall containing stands hosted by businesses and organisations who make their own unique contributions to the profession and public protection. This year's symposium will paint vivid pictures of the future of UK consumer protection. Of course, the future is unknown, so you will witness a collage of possible futures that depend on how we act today and how we rise to the challenge. I hope you all make new and vital connections at the symposium, but above all, I hope that you enjoy the event. I look forward to meeting you all at the Mercure Grand, Bristol, at the next CTSI Symposium in 2022. In the meanwhile, be well, stay safe, and thank you very much.
Thank you to Lord Lindsay for that enjoyable video demonstrating his commitment and his knowledge on trading standards matters, and hopefully we'll get to meet him in person at the next symposium. I'm sure, like me, you're pretty fed up of talking heads at the moment, so hopefully we'll actually get to see him in person at the next event. So next we've got a video from our Minister, Paul Scully. Due to complications, commitments around the Cabinet reshuffle, he wasn't able to commit to be with us today. So he's sent us a video that covers all the things that matter to us.
Thank you for inviting me today. I'm sorry that I'm unable to attend in person. Birmingham has always been really important to the UK economy. It's a long history of industrialisation and innovation. The world's first cotton mill was built in Birmingham in 1741. And Birmingham can pride itself in having an SA office, one of the earliest forms of consumer protection. The past 18 months have been a real challenge. The big takeaway, though, is how the Trading Standards Service has responded fantastically to COVID, just as it did with the horse meat scandal. Once again, you've showed how agile and flexible the service is. I've noticed how you've worked closely with the CMA and other organisations to protect consumers against the unscrupulous practice of price gouging during the pandemic. Thank you for your continuing professionalism during these really difficult times. Strong consumer law and its enforcement make our economy fairer. Consumers return to businesses that treat them fairly. The trading standards profession is at the forefront of helping businesses navigate the complexity of regulations and standards, and particularly during this post-EU exit period. And that's why the government launched 2 consultations in the summer to review our operation of consumer protections to make sure that they meet the needs of consumers and businesses today. I'd like to say a little about those consultations. Competition and consumer policy have a vital role to play as we build back better after the pandemic, uniting and levelling up the UK. We're consulting to ensure that the Competition Markets Authority can act quickly to take action against harmful anti-competitive behaviour and resolve structural weakness in markets, better protecting consumers and businesses. We're consulting on updating consumer rights for the digital age, ensuring that consumers get a fair deal from innovative new businesses practices and increasing confidence in online spending. We're consulting on proposals to make it easier for consumers and traders to resolve problems on their own and to give enforcers the powers that they need to fix those consumer problems. On this in particular, we want to hear from you in the Trading Standards community. BEIS funds National Trading Standards and Trading Standards Scotland. These organisations are delivering great results for consumers and have done stellar work to create a network of local, regional and national enforcement. For example, I was pleased to learn that in 2021, NTS regional teams dealt with more than £51 million worth in consumer business detriment that resulted in 30 people being convicted. We want to hear from you about how this system is delivering and how we can make the most of it. The government has also launched a consultation in digital markets. The UK's economy is one of the world's largest economies. Over the past 15 years, the digital economy has grown substantially and now makes a significant contribution to our overall economy. However, there's a growing international consensus that the unprecedented concentration of power in a small number of digital firms is holding back innovation and growth. The UK has played a leading role in developing a new approach to tackle competition issues in digital markets through internationally recognised reports such as the Furman Review. The new digital competition regime that we're proposing is part of the government's plan to ensure that our economy is dynamic and competitive, ensuring that it's fair and open for businesses and supporting the need and interests of consumers and society. It complements the proposals in the Competition and Consumer Policy consultation. We believe that a bespoke competition regime is needed to address the unique characteristics of digital markets. Our proposals will give the CMA new powers to understand fast-moving digital markets and respond to harms to competition with agility and flexibility. The regime will be implemented by a new digital markets unit within the CMA. We're proposing that the digital markets unit will focus only on those firms that have substantial and entrenched market power and a strategic position within the UK economy. These firms will be subject to an enforceable code of conduct and structural interventions that will promote competition and innovation. Both consultations are due to conclude soon, the 1st of October. After then, we'll review the responses and consider our next steps. But we're also consulting on a package of measures to improve the take-up, the quality and oversight of alternative dispute resolution services. These include proposals to raise the quality of ADR provision and recommendations to make businesses' participation in dispute resolution mandatory in the home improvements and motor sectors. We believe that these changes will help deliver consistent, timely and fair service that consumers and businesses can trust to resolve those disputes amicably out of the courts. As important members of the consumer enforcement landscape, we'll welcome your thoughts and your views on these issues and reforms as they continue to develop. The Secretary of State and I and BEIS officials have been engaging extensively with the stakeholders on these topics. We all look forward to hearing your formal views in response to these consultations and to ongoing engagement as we move to implementing the reforms. But the government is also eager to identify the opportunities for competition policy to support the UK's wider priorities. For example, succeeding in our commitment to deliver a net zero economy will require all of us to identify opportunities for positive change. Competition policy is no exception, which is why these proposals include a request to the CMA for advice on how competition and consumer law can support UK's net zero goals. Now, I'd also just like to spend a brief moment talking about climate change. The UK is hosting COP26. It provides us with a platform to accelerate global action on climate change. Many consumers will be actively thinking about changing to clean energy. Now, these are big changes for a consumer market, with both opportunities and risks. I look forward to discussing that with you over the coming months and the years. But regrettably, when there are new initiatives, scammers look for opportunities to rip people off. Many trading standards departments will be promoting National Consumer Week. That's going to help consumers look out for scams and misleading green and environmental claims when they're making purchases. We want our consumers to purchase eco-friendly items safely without fear of being scammed. But turning now to your agenda this week, I'm interested to hear that CTSI has signed up to the Business in Communities Race to Work Charter. I'm really pleased that CTSI are taking steps to ensure that the trading standards profession is considering how it can better reflect the communities that it serves. I understand that later in the symposium that the findings of the diversity survey will be discussed. As public servants, it's really important that our organisations reflect the communities that we represent. The years ahead will see changes in the way our marketplaces operate and the way that we protect customers and consumers. Trading standards will have a key role in making that happen. We can all be really proud of our efforts to meet the challenges of the last 18 months and can look to 2022 with optimism and with the Commonwealth Games taking place here in Birmingham with a bit of joy. I really wish you a very successful symposium.
Some kind words there from Paul Scully and requests for consultation feedbacks, which I know the CTSI policy team are continuing to do, and encouraging words about our diversity survey, which was really good to hear. So now I'm going to hand over to Will Cresswell, who's going to introduce and run our plenary session for us now. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. I hope you can all hear me at the back. Is this an odd situation where we're actually seeing human beings again? Isn't that wonderful? Albeit we've just seen 2 videos. But firstly, I'd just like to say how delighted I am to be invited to come to speak to you today. And secondly, an apology, I guess, because I shouldn't be here. You should really be hearing from our Chief Executive, Graham Russell, who, like many other people, seem to have other commitments today. He's actually abroad at the moment, but I know he would be. He wants to express his disappointment that he couldn't make it here today. So I'm afraid you got me. So I'm Will Cresswell. I'm a Deputy Director in OPSS, the Office for Product Safety and Standards. So I'm going to tell you a bit about what we're doing at the moment. We're going to reflect on the last year or so. I'm going to talk a bit about the NAO review into the product safety system, our own call for evidence on the future product safety framework. I'm going to talk a bit about metrology and imperial measures, some updates on that. And finally, I'm going to talk to you about the announcement that OPSS is going to become the next or the new construction products regulator. So the theme of the plenary session that will follow me is it's about building confidence, it's about recovery, and we'll hear from our panel members about their own perspectives on that. I think it has been the most extraordinary, I was going to say year, but it's nearly 18 months now, isn't it? And particularly, we've heard from Lord Lindsay and from our Minister how the trading standards profession has risen to that challenge in incredibly difficult times. And I want to be the first to say that we really, really do recognise that. And the collaboration that we've experienced over the last 18 months or so has been extraordinary. And a very, very big thank you to all of you who've been involved in that. I am the worst person for IT. There we go. I kill absolutely everything. I'm famous for it. My laptop is currently smoking in the corner somewhere, I think. So as I say, the last year or so have been incredibly unusual times. We've had a global pandemic that few of us saw coming, although I think Wendy Martin might well have had a comment on that. I think she saw it coming. We've had EU exit and the interesting times following that, and a whole load of other pressures, financial and otherwise. And clearly, at the moment, there's some interesting experiences with fuel. So we worked very, very closely with you guys, and I just want to reflect on a few of those particular issues. The business restrictions that were put in place in an attempt to try and control COVID, the trading standards community was in the front line working with businesses on that, and working very closely with some of my colleagues, one of whom is sitting on the podium next to me, Caroline North, and also Catherine Preece, both of whom had pretty much speed dial into colleagues in Number 10 and Cabinet Office, and working very, very closely with colleagues in Department of Health, MHRA, the Medicines Regulator, and indeed the Health and Safety Executive. So there was a great deal of work in the background. Someone rather unkindly called Caroline the Whitehall battering ram, but in truth, the feedback that she was getting from yourselves about the pressures you were under were going straight to the heart of government. And I genuinely mean she had Number 10 on speed dial 24/7. I think you've recovered. Yeah. So just to get a context of that, there were about 3,700 inquiries from local authorities that were fed either into OPSS or Number 10. And the key themes and issues that were identified were taken to the relevant policy holders across Whitehall, as I say. And I think pretty much we got resolution to most of those. But it was really, really important to hear from you guys. We collaborated. It's a theme that you'll hear more and more and more from OPSS, is how we collaborate and how we want to work with others. Particularly influencing government, and some key highlights, for instance, are the creation of 8 fast response PA panels, public primary authority panels. They were later reduced to become 6, but they supported over 200 businesses and over 1,000 premises, including things like warehousing, logistics and distribution, homeware, hardware, non-food retail, hospitality, home improvements, building supplies, caravans and vehicle sales. So a massive range of advice going on there, which is really, really important in terms of keeping business open. And then, of course, at the end of last year, we saw the end of the transition period, so-called transition period for EU exit. And OPSS has provided over 2,100 local authority staff with training on regulations, the use of new powers, evidence gathering and serving notices. There's been a huge amount of work. We heard from Lord Lindsay about what was done at the ports and borders in terms of PPE, and we also looked at air cleaners and UV devices. Again, working very, very closely together on that. And there were some real success stories, as we heard from Lord Lindsay. So moving on to the National Audit Office review of product safety, they announced that they were going to look at the product safety system last year, and they concluded their review earlier on this year. They produced a report And I would say thank you to those of you that put your contributions into the NAO review. It was very broad-ranging. It looked at the whole system, but clearly it looked at OPSS and the achievements that we've made over the last 3 and a bit years, since our inception in 2018, January 2018. There's been a vast amount of activity in that. And as you can see on the slide, they made some key findings or recommendations on that. They looked closely at OPSS's strategy in terms of how we build, analyse, inform and enforce. Those are our four building blocks of our strategy. So building, we're thinking about how we build our capacity as a national regulator and how we work with local trading standards officers to enforce. We're also thinking about how we work with consumers to allow them to make informed choices and give them the information that they need. And on the analyse side of things, we're investing a great deal at the moment in terms of our scientific and technical capabilities, our ability to think about risk in a different way, and investing in research as well. And we'll hear a bit more about that, I think, later. In terms of the overall review, they looked at some specific issues, furniture fire safety, white goods and electricals, fireworks and cosmetics, all of which we've done quite a deal of work on. And they also focused on the sort of e-commerce side of things, online sales. The overall findings, one of the key things is that they've asked us to think about how we measure impact. And we're thinking hard about our data, the data that we have to use to measure impact, to assess systems, and we're developing a data strategy as a result of that. I think it's fair to say that data is a very, very key, it's almost like our lifeblood, really. It's key to everything we do, and acquiring and using data is fundamental to everything we do. Just in terms of impact as well, I'd just like to flag that we delivered over 4,000 days of officer training with over 200 local authorities participating in that. So moving on, I'd like to say a bit more about our call for evidence around the UK product safety framework. We're taking a systemic approach to this, and again, thank you for those of you that have responded to our call for evidence. This is as a result of the fact that we recognise that the world we live in is changing faster than I think over my lifetime, certainly that it's changed before, and we're having to respond to new technologies, e-commerce, sustainability, the sharing economy, those kind of things. And new technology, I'm thinking about things like 3D printing, the ability for someone to print a product in their home or a replacement part in their home. Artificial intelligence and the role that has to play going forward, and virtual reality. So some really complex issues. If we thought the product safety system, the framework at the moment was complex, we just have to project forward and think about what it might look like in the future. It is going to get more complicated, and we need to be able to think ahead to be able to regulate for that. We ran an event last week, indeed, at City University called Fridge 2050, and some of you may have been involved in that. The whole point of that was so that we can project forward and think about what a product such as a fridge will look like in 2050, what that means in terms of manufacturing, in terms of heat management, in terms of eco-design, in terms of regulation, in terms of policy development. Those are really big issues that we need to get our heads around. And we heard some fascinating stuff about that. And how we regulate in the future is key. We've got to think forward. It's absolutely vital. In terms of the call for evidence, we've had over 150 responses. And we're reviewing those at the moment and thinking about how we take those forward. We will issue a government response in due course. But as you can see from the slide, there are 5 high-level themes, which I'm sure you can read, so I won't read them out. They're quite challenging issues, and as I say, I've touched on the Fridge 2050 issue. Again, I'm very happy to discuss this after the session. A few words on metrology and imperial measures. The alert amongst you will have noticed, I think it was last week, that Lord Frost made an announcement saying that effectively we're going to take a policy decision around the use of imperial measures and review that and consider how that might be taken forward. That's a very early and live discussion at the moment, and we're considering what that means in terms of implementation and indeed the legislation behind it. I can't really say any more on that at the moment because the announcement was only made last week, and we're still in the very, very early stages of considering it. The other issue that I wanted to touch on, it's unrelated, but also you may well have seen that we have decided to cease our commercial conformity assessment activities in the National Measurement Office, which is part of OPSS, based in Teddington. All that means is we're signalling our intention to stop the activity of commercial conformity assessment. It does not mean that we're stopping our statutory functions in that space, and we will continue to support local authority metrology services. And again, I'm very happy to discuss that with you later on. Just as an aside, many of you will have known a colleague, David Templeton. In the conversation just immediately prior to this session, I became aware that we have named a laboratory in Teddington after David, and I don't think it's widely known. So I just wanted to put it out there that we do have a lab called the Templeton Lab in Teddington, and that is expressly to honour his name. So I'm not sure that we've managed to communicate that effectively before now. So I just thought I'd let you know. Finally, I just want to say a bit about what we're doing on the construction products area of work. So in January, it was announced, we had conversations with the Secretary of State in the Ministry of Housing, Communities, Local Government, MHCLG, now got a new name which I can't possibly work out what it stands for. We had a conversation with him. He was very keen that we took over the responsibility for the new and burgeoning construction products regulation side of things. So we took that on in January this year, and we're operating in shadow form effectively at the moment. But again, we're using those constructs in our strategy in terms of building, analysing, enforcing, and informing. So we're thinking hard about what kind of skills we need, how we work with local authorities to deliver regulation in this space. There is the new building safety regulator, which of course is being incubated in the Health and Safety Executive at the moment. So we're working closely with them to think about the interface between our work and their work. And there's some very live conversations in terms of policy development and steers with our colleagues in the new MHCLG. I think it's called DLUC these days. Don't ask me what that stands for. So yeah, in terms of the strategic constructs around that, again, is thinking about the market, and of course this is very much driven by the outcomes from the terrible tragedy of the Grenfell Tower fire. So thinking hard about how we test, how we build test capability, how we think about standards, and how enforcement has traditionally been done, for instance, in the sector, and can we do anything differently? It's a highly, highly complicated area, but we're making good strides. And as you can see from the slide there, we will receive, we hope, royal assent to some new legislation probably in May 2023, at which point we will be the fully fledged regulator and able to use our new powers. But until then, we're going to be working in shadow form and looking to have live and helpful conversations with you guys to take that forward. So I think that's a general quick canter through from the OPSS perspective. So it's probably enough from me. But I would just say thank you for the opportunity for being able to stand here in the flesh, as it were, and update you on what we're doing. I'm looking forward to a really excellent symposium and some really constructive and helpful conversations. And of course, I've talked about collaboration. Again, thinking about how we collaborate in the future, and building on what we've already got together. I think there's a lot of opportunity going forward, and I simply can't wait for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everybody. My name's Mike Kearney. I lead on business engagement for OPSS, and I'm chairing the business panel this morning. It's great to see you all today. I say it's great. It's the first time I've been out of the spare room in 18 months, and it's a bit daunting looking at a room of people kind of gawping back at me. So bear with me. But it is, genuinely a pleasure and a privilege to be here, and it's great to be returning to normality. We don't have a huge amount of time, unfortunately, but I think we've got what will be a really interesting session for you all. The intention is to discuss, I guess, the vital role that the profession plays and has played in supporting businesses and the wider economy and protecting consumers. To reflect, I guess, on how the challenges of the last 18 months, whether that be COVID or the end of the transition period, or indeed fuel shortages or whatever next, how all of those challenges and the work and training standards within that has changed perceptions of the profession, both amongst the businesses that you regulate and also in the central government departments that hold the purse strings. And then finally, we're going to think about what opportunities there might be in that context. So in a world where businesses are trying to recover from COVID and trying to navigate the intricacies of departure from the EU, is there an opportunity there to kind of strengthen the profession's role as a business support mechanism, align better with other business support initiatives across government, and kind of extract maximum value from the expertise that's already out there. We do have a terrific range of speakers to kind of, I think, come at this from a variety of angles. Unfortunately, two of the speakers have dropped out at the last moment. We did have Aftab Chugtai from the Asian Business of Chamber of Commerce in Birmingham. He was also a local business owner in the area, so it would have been terrific to have his perspective on things. Unfortunately, there's been an outbreak of COVID in his business, so he's kind of trying to fight fires there and is unable to join. And we were going to have Phil Peake from the one of the local growth hubs, Leicestershire and Warwickshire Growth Hub. Apparently, he's just resigned from that job to take up a role in HGV. There goes that gag. But it would have been a belter. But we do have some great speakers still. I think many of you will be familiar with Martin Traynor, OBE. He's the small business Crown representative, and I think is pretty well uniquely positioned to talk about some of the central government initiatives and also how they align with the reality on the ground. Given his background working in LEPs and in the Chambers of Commerce, he can really talk at length about the value of bringing regulators and businesses together. We also have Alan Murray from the British Safety Industry Federation. He's the chief executive there and kind of very much one of the voices of the PPE sector. As we all know, PPE has been in sharp relief over the last 18 months, and Alan has been very much at the heart of that, both supporting regulators in understanding what is a really complicated sector and also highlighting issues with compliance and sort of shady operators bringing in non-compliant product and all of the risks that brings. So I'm hoping Alan will be able to bring some focus into that tension, I guess, between the need for good, strong business support and also robust market surveillance and enforcement. And then to fill a chair, I guess, or to cover a bit, we've got Caroline North, who's Deputy Director of Enforcement within OPSS. I don't think she's going to be here talking with that particular perspective in mind. It's more her role historically in trading standards in running kind of business support services in local authorities that again will help kind of inform the discussion. So for now, I'll hand over to Martin. I think you're coming up here, Martin, rather than staying there, and we'll get the session going. Once everyone's introduced themselves, we'll have a bit of Q&A and hopefully some positive discussion. So over to you, Martin.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Delighted to be able to join you this morning. Well, as you saw by the introduction, I have this very, very grand title of the Small Business Crown Representative. Now, it's not a particularly powerful position in the Cabinet Office, but there's one thing for sure, it always gets you a good table in a restaurant. Now, what my role is in central government is twofold. One is to work with government departments to try and make our procurement practices, procedures and policies simpler for small businesses to navigate. I'm also charged with working with small businesses to encourage them to think about pitching for central government work and also public sector work. Now, to put this into a policy context, central government spends something in the region of 60 billion a year on goods and services. And it is the government's aspiration that for every £3 we spend centrally on goods and services, £1 is spent with SMEs. If you take the wider public sector expenditure on goods and services, it's something in the region of 292 billion a year. It's actually 14% of GDP. So one of the key things we want to try and do is support small businesses to get them to a position where they can actually pitch for that type of work. Now, interesting, when I've spoken at this synopsis some years ago, I was here as Chief Executive of Leicestershire Chamber of Commerce, where I had the privilege of leading on the pilot for Better Business for All with Catherine Priest. Now, that is an excellent example of where we can use regulatory services to support and help businesses. I remember having conversations 10 plus years ago about this concept that actually organisations and delivery agencies like trading standards are part of the business support network. That was a very difficult thing for people to understand or to take on board, because traditionally it was about enforcement. But actually we've managed over a period of time to move away from this direct enforcement role more towards now trying to get businesses compliant. And I always used to say that 99% of businesses want to be compliant or just don't realize they're not compliant. The 1% are the rogues out there, and they're the ones you should be chasing down. But Better Business for All is an excellent example of how trading standards can play a part in supporting small businesses. And we've got to remember, in the UK, there are 5.5 million SMEs. It's the backbone of the economy. The more we can do to support those businesses, help them to grow and to be able to pitch for things like government work, the better. So I welcome your support in taking this agenda forward. Is that okay?
So thank you very much, Martin. Good morning, everyone. My name, as Michael referred to, is Alan Murray. I'm responsible for the British Safety Industry Federation. Now, all our members are corporations or businesses, and they are the manufacturers of personal protective equipment and associated safety products. But our members also include all of the formerly notified bodies, now approved bodies, who are scoped for conformity assessment of PPE. So they're within our membership as well. So I'm also president of the European Safety Federation, which is the umbrella body for the member states, national bodies, which can be a bit awkward as a Brit. So that includes all of the 27 states, but also stretches as far as the Russian Trade Association and the Turkish Trade Associations. So PPE obviously up until the pandemic had very little, if any, public profile. That's obviously changed, but for years we have been calling for more market surveillance on PPE for this safety critical range because we have known there's an issue. And my own journey with trading standards began in 2015. We joined CTSI, albeit briefly, but we participated in the event at Bournemouth, and we took that forward as part of that relationship. But we've been trying to make it clear that while anyone is entitled to sell safety products, people should not just be buying PPE and safety from anyone. And many people found that out to their costs in 2019 and 2020. So I'm acutely aware of the resource challenges that the profession has faced, which is indeed, in my opinion, also reflected within the Health and Safety Executive, who are the other in-market market surveillance authority. In my view, this split responsibility is somewhat unfortunate, with the HSE responsible for PPE while it's being used at work. And that's where the vast majority of PPE is consumed, obviously, and trading standards responsible for the product offered to the consumer. The supply chain does not differentiate where the product goes, including online sales. The problem with non-compliant PPE, in my opinion, starts in the supply chain. The solution, though, also sits in the supply chain before non-compliant product gets to the wearer. Now, HSE does not have natural access to the supply chain, whereas I believe trading standards does. Now, BSIF have a primary authority partnership with Hertfordshire, and that's been there since the programme's inception. And we work it probably slightly differently. I hope my friends Richard Lewis and Vicky Birch would not contradict me here, but we provide an awful lot of the intel and information on PPE to Hertfordshire. But the partnership is strong, it's very proactive, and it's delivered success on several initiatives over the last couple of years. I suppose my central frustration, if there is one with the trading standards arena, is the difficulty in getting local authorities and councils to work in collaboration. Different councils have different priorities, different resource pressures. I would just like to see somehow us able to create some more collaboration. Now, I can talk about enforcement of PPE for a long time, but this is meant to be a short introduction, so I'll be brief as I can. And I perfectly understand that the byword is support for business, but enforcement of PPE regulation must be seen to be happening. The process must be less of a burden, I believe, for trading standards, and I wholeheartedly believe that PPE, which is not proven to be safe and compliant with the regulation, PPE is a highly regulated product, should immediately be considered as high risk, and intervention should take place without the need for a great deal of further investigation or conformity assessment of that product. It's almost the burden of proof has to change. Enforcement itself, I believe, is support for business and support for a fair marketplace. Lack of enforcement utterly undermines the regulation. It penalises good businesses who comply and allows the rogues to peddle unsafe personal protective equipment. PPE is used, it's only used to mitigate against an existing hazard. So if it is not proven to be safe and perform, it puts wearers at risk right away. Economic operators must prove it's safe or immediately face the consequences. Now, in closing, I'll make you aware that BSIF manages something called the Registered Safety Supplier Scheme, and that's mandatory for all members who are involved in personal protective equipment. The scheme randomly selects and tests one piece of PPE from members each year, as well as their normal regulatory obligations and responsibilities. Now, within our membership, the failure rate for the product runs at 10%. As a service, we also test non-members, and in 2021, that failure rate is running at 77%. So we have a right of sanction with our members, and we ensure that the product is quarantined and corrective actions taken. We do not have that right of sanction with non-members. So in closing, I'd like to offer to put the expertise of BSIF at the disposal of the profession and help us all create a safer and fairer marketplace in the UK. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Caroline North, Deputy Director for Enforcement at the Office of Product Safety and Standards. Thank you for the introductions, Mike. I'm here today talking really about the role that OPSS played with business restrictions throughout last year. And in particular, my role was to lead for OPSS as being the voice of the regulator into government around what was needed regarding the legislation covering business restrictions. As Will says, I think I've just about recovered from that. If you do say the words dog grooming, car washes and mixed-use retail to me, I do feel the need to go and lie down in a very dark room. Did I ever think that the highlight of my career would be the various permutations of car washers? Possibly not. As for the various combinations of baby yoga, baby massage, when is it a support group, when is it not? I could talk forever more about the challenges that we had on that and the conversations that we had across government. Will is quite right. That did involve number 10 having my personal phone number and quite often would be phoning me up with some very bizarre questions. So aside from when is a zoo not a zoo, when is it a nightclub not a nightclub, I think obviously Will and Mike have both mentioned, myself and Catherine Priest are both former regulators. For those of you that don't know, Catherine is a former head of environmental health. What that meant between us, because we had both been in the job, because we had both managed officers doing the job, it meant that that voice we were putting in had that credibility around the reality of doing the job. We both knew exactly what pressures frontline officers were under. We both knew what pressures managers were under in terms of making difficult decisions regarding resources. We fundamentally knew the tools that regulators need was very clear legislation. We needed the gap between guidance and legislation reducing. But also, I'd had the benefit, being slightly older, I had actually been involved in the foot and mouth 2001 crisis. And I could remember then the profile of trading standards after foot and mouth and what opportunities that had opened in terms of DEFRA and funding. And all the way through, one thing Catherine and I were very keen to ensure was the opportunities that this was given to really raise the profile of trading standards across government. How could we join officers up better with policyholders? How could we build those bridges greater? How could we ensure long-term sustainability for all the lessons learned and the need to have those dynamic relations continuing? I really don't want to steal the thunder, but two of my colleagues, Jackie White and Caroline Clark, will be going into much more detail in a session that they're running around that. But it was very much around using our existing networks, strengthening those primary authority panels, strengthening the networks we got through Better Business for All, using all the various regional coordinators, supporting MHCLG with their local authority working group and ensuring that had a representative membership. So that's as much as I want to cover. Whilst I feel like I might be at an AA meeting, I will make one apology. It was me that wrote the definition for the revised hardware definition. I do apologise if that caused problems. It was done in 11 minutes one Saturday afternoon between me and the Cabinet Office that might have included the lines, what do you actually want doing with kitchen showrooms? And so if there's anyone critical of that, that revised definition, I'm afraid that was me. So yes, I will hand back to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. Thanks, Caroline. Over the last 18 months, I was dealing with a lot of the business inquiries that OPSS was getting from trade associations and others. And Caroline, I think I phoned her up 5 times a day, every day for the last year, asking for her to get the answers on all of the various COVID-related queries that were coming through. So thanks for that, and thanks for stepping in 5 minutes before this session, because we were having a mild panic before we got going. So thanks, Caroline, really appreciate it. I hope the sort of range of brief introductory updates was of interest. Do we have any particular questions from the audience? I see a hand up over there. I have a hefty squint, by the way, so I'm probably there's a dozen people who think I'm looking at them. Just,
very loud anyway. Oh, I won't need to be. That's good. I'm Andy Wilson. I'm from Bristol City Council, and I'm sorry I've done it again. Yes. Very interesting insights in the complications of the fridges for 2050. It's great, and it is important that things like that are tackled, and I do appreciate that. Do we think, though, that perhaps for small businesses and enforcers alike, somehow you need to keep it simple? When I come to complex electronic equipment, I do like to start with the plug. So for both of us, perhaps what we need is a simple guide to what you need to find, what the essential safety messages are. And it's true for PPE as well, what goes to essential. And I have to say, since we last met, I would not be here if PPE did not work. And that was as simple as a bicycle helmet. And that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. So just to summarise, I think it's a question about whether the compliance advice for businesses, small businesses in particular, is straightforward enough, and whether I don't know whether that falls into the product safety review or I don't know, Alan.
I don't know if is my microphone on? Can people hear me? Yeah, thanks for that question. And I don't want to hog something on PPE, but it is my area. I'm glad it worked. It's the item of last resort, and central to my point that if something is put on the market, placed on the market, and it's non-compliant, not proven to be safe, it's going to have a major, major bad effect, and it should be considered as high risk. But to establish that the product is compliant, it's quite straightforward in terms of the regulations within formerly the European regulation, now adopted in UK law. It's quite clear what that should be. And I'm very happy, as I said, it wasn't meant to be a throwaway line, to put our collateral at the disposal of trading standards, and we have done anyway through Hertfordshire. But as far as PPE goes, it's quite straightforward. As far as other complex products, I'm not capable of talking on that.
No, I guess so within OPSS we've developed the PAS on product recalls, which try to simplify quite a complex issue so that a small business could navigate all of that. And we're currently working on another PAS on bringing safe products to market, which is aiming to do the same thing. Translate what must be quite a baffling array of requirements to an SME in particular, and make it into something that they can work with. I don't know. We haven't got a policy colleague on the panel, but I expect one of the issues dealt with in the product safety review is this. Is the regulation intelligible to people that are trying to comply with it?
I was just going to say, in terms of our product safety review, many of us profess to understand the system as it stands at the moment, but I think that's probably because we've been imbued in the subject for many years. If you ask a consumer if they understand the product safety system, they'll say, well, their assumption is that absolutely everything is safe and is tested. Clearly, that's not the case. So with that realization, part of our rationale behind looking at doing the review on product safety system is to think about the complexity and how we simplify it. Particularly, as I said in my presentation, thinking about the challenges we're going to face in the future with new technologies and and how we address those. It is phenomenally complicated at the moment, and I'm sure you'll recognise and agree with that. How we simplify it is the question we're grappling with at the moment, and I think it's a difficult one.
Thanks, Will. Unless there's any other comments on that, we'll go out for another question. There's a hand up right at the back.
Hi there. George Curry from South Lanarkshire Council. I'm interested to hear what the panel's views are on fulfilment houses, and obviously that you're having a product safety review about it. But give me your thoughts on fulfilment houses. Obviously they seem to be operating outside the law. There's obviously kind of big, massive businesses that are happy with the current situation. So.
I'll go for that. So fulfilment houses, clearly, I mean, we're looking at the system. We're looking at the whole system. Fulfilment houses are a node within the system. How we enforce there and how we think about the system is fundamental. It's a new and expanding challenge, I think. I'm going to give Caroline the heads up that I'm going to come to her in a second in terms of how we address the enforcement issues there. But yeah, I mean, it's a classic example of the way the world is changing around us, the way e-commerce is driving different dynamics, and how we've got to be fleet of foot to be able to deal with those. It's incredibly difficult when you've got somebody producing something in China and selling it from a small PO box in China through a fulfillment house direct to a consumer. How on earth do we regulate that? Those are the kind of things we're trying to grapple with at the moment. And again, I mean, I don't have any answers at the moment. I'm hoping Caroline will.
Thanks, Phil. Yes, I think there's obviously 2 points here. One, obviously in the product safety review, it is an area, and that gives us an opportunity to look at that in terms of whether we sort of can make legislative changes around that. But nonetheless, in the interim, there obviously are here, and we've got the existing framework. So how do we do that? Certainly for us in enforcement, we do have fulfilment houses identified as a priority. It's actually been a priority for us since we started. However, with things like COVID and everything, we haven't been able necessarily to progress that at the pace we wanted. So we are currently working at that and working on that, and we have been in engagement with some local authority colleagues about ways forward we could do that. So certainly from our perspective, agree, like with everybody, they are very high on our agenda. We fully appreciate that obviously at sort of a local level, some of these are, they can be a national problem, therefore it may well fall to us as OPSS to take the lead on that. So yes, very high on our agenda. Same challenges as yourself at the minute in the current safety framework, but there are opportunities for us moving forward to see what's needed throughout the product safety review, and hopefully that can draw some benefits in that. So no immediate answers, Will.
But very live conversations with the online platforms about their models, because each and every platform has a different model, as you know. So, for everybody to have the same model that we could just home in on. But as soon as you come up with a solution for one, then somebody else comes up with a new
And even
one.
within platforms, they've got different models. Yeah. So, some are running 3 or 4 different business models, which can add to the complications.
Yeah. Thanks, both. I spotted a hand up there, second table in.
Simon Wilkes. I don't have a loud voice, so. Simon Wilkes, Worcestershire Trading Standards and Worcestershire Regulatory Services. One of the consultations that the Minister didn't mention in his presentation is the one that's come out in relation to the wider regulatory framework, which talks about moving away from standards, because apparently standards stifle innovation, to a more common law approach that relies on case law. Quite frankly, that fills me with dread, particularly with the things that you've just mentioned about fulfilment houses. As far as I can see, environmental law, which is one of the other areas we deal with, improvements have been driven by standards, not stifled them. So I just wondered what the panel felt about that current consultation, if that is genuinely the direction of travel for government, how do we think that businesses will deal with that? Thank you.
Another one for me.
I'm glad you're here, Will.
Yes. So I'm going to give you my personal view. I think standards are absolutely fundamental. We work very, very closely with the BSI, British Standards Institution. Indeed, we have oversight of them. BEIS has effectively sponsors them. We have our Secretary of State has nominated them as the single standards body for the UK. I really don't see that changing. Standards are so important in terms of driving innovation. I'd quite like to get Scott Steedman, who's the Director General for BSI, to stand up in front of us and tell us why standards are so important. He's incredibly eloquent on it. And indeed, I was at the ISO's 75th anniversary General Assembly last week, and our Minister, Paul Scully, spoke in the flesh at that event, and clearly put his weight behind the standards regime and how important it was.
Thanks. I don't know, Alan, have you got anything to add on that?
No, I think performance standards for products are absolutely essential. End of.
Simple as that. Okay. Yep.
I need a microphone.
Thank you. Ian Simpson, a specialist trainer for regulatory compliance apprenticeship with Babington. I think we should welcome Ops' regulatory role with construction products. I think that's to be welcomed, and HSE as well. Reflection, I was on a webinar on the lessons from Grenfell last week, really, really good. And many lessons to be learned from Grenfell, I think. But one that's maybe linked into what you said here is, of course, we need resources for regulators. We need competence and capability of regulators. And I just posed the question about independence of regulators and conflicts of interest, and whether real or perceived. And I noted your withdrawal from commercial work on metrology, and just linking to that, and really a question to the panel about the strengthening the need when we talk about enforcement, about independence and dealing with potential, as I say, perceived or real conflicts of interest when we talk about the ultimate regulator.
I can take my pick here. I don't know.
Could it be somebody other than me?
Well, I was going to say, we've got our money's worth out of you, Will. But, I don't know, from your experience, Martin, with BBFA and others, is there a perception of?
Well, I suppose it comes back to this. You expect regulators to be independent, and I can understand the logic there. But I think for a lot of small businesses, it's about proportionality and fairness. And interesting, some of the work that we've done around procurement, we've actually set up a procurement review service, so small businesses has the opportunity to raise issues with us directly, that if they feel that in a procurement they've not been treated fairly. And I suspect in the world of regulation it's probably the same.
I mean, here I go again. So independence, what do you mean by independence? It's a difficult thing. We sit within a government department, the Department for Business. We're also, in terms of construction products, working for another Secretary of State in whatever it's called, DLUC now. To what extent are we independent? We are as independent as we can be, within the reasons of the political responsibility that we have to report to. I can think of other regulators who are more independent, but still responsible to government. And it's important, I think, for consumers to understand that there is some kind of accountability to the political machine as well. I think perceived conflicts of interest, I mean, you point to the fact that we've made the decision to step away from the commercial conformity assessment work. that is exactly for that reason, because we think the market is better served by us stepping away from it. We have a conflict of interest, and we need to deal with that. So those are fundamental principles, I think, that stand sound. It's difficult getting the balance right, but I think as we stand at the moment, we're probably in the best position in terms of managing that balance.
Thanks, Will. I'm conscious we've somehow run 25 minutes over, and I don't know if I'm about to get ushered off stage by some heavies, but have we got time for one more question? 5 minutes. We've got 5 more minutes. So if there's another question out there, particularly keen to get things around the kind of theme of the session, so business support, opportunities for local regulators perhaps to team up with other sort of central government provision on business support, growth hubs and whatnot. Yep.
I think the microphone gone to
the microphone's headed backwards, I think. Whoever has the microphone.
Excellent. That's me. Christine Heemskirk, CTSI Lead, Officer for Product Safety. I was very pleased to see one of the recommendations from the National Audit was that there needs to be a clear plan on how we can actually rise to this challenge, including tools and data. And Will actually then went on to say that data is key. Data is the lifeblood for regulating and for everything else. I totally agree with that. So, in light of some recent injuries, recent fatalities, tragedies involving swallowing magnets, swallowing batteries, children being strangled by blind cords, these are injuries that have become known to us long after the trend of the injury has actually started. So the fatalities obviously have occurred way after the initial injuries were being noticed. And they were only being noticed at local hospitals because we don't have a national injury database. So do the panel agree that there is absolute necessity for a national injury database, not to just help regulation, but to help policymakers and business?
Thanks for the question. I'll yarn on for a moment before probably handing over to Will, who's looking keen as mustard. I just agree on the data point. I think data is vital, both in terms of targeting our resources effectively and also establishing whether our activities as a regulator is having any impact whatsoever. So without data, it's a real challenge. As to the specifics of your question, it's probably best I defer to my colleague Will.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, without data, you can't measure. So, what's the point of any of us if we don't actually know that we're having an impact and we're of benefit to society and to consumers particularly, and indeed business? Yes, we need to get better data. There is data out there that we need to access. You talk about, harm injury data held by the NHS. It's quite a challenge to get hold of that. We are currently working with colleagues such as ROSPA to try and work out how best to access that. And we're developing models around that so that we can better access data in the future. I'm particularly interested in, for instance, what the insurance industry can tell us. They've been quite reluctant to share data previously, but in a previous life when I was dealing with food, we had some very interesting conversations with the insurance industry and the major retailers and food manufacturers about the data they held and how we could access that in terms of anonymized, aggregated data, which overcomes the competition law issues that they so readily raise. So there's a bunch of stuff around data that we need to get better at. We should understand that that's going to be difficult, but we won't get it unless we ask. So we're very, very live to it and working hard to try and improve that. And that's for everyone's benefit. It's not just us.
Martin, have you got any thoughts?
Yes, I have. I think there's lots of data out there, but we're not necessarily either looking in the right place or bringing it all together. And I'll give you an example. I was deputy chairman of a large hospital trust in Leicester, and about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a huge spike in children coming into A&E. and we were all puzzled why this was. But when we actually spoke to the consultants, we found out that 25% of the children being admitted were due to trampolining accidents in their homes. And again, suddenly when you think about that, there's got to be a product safety issue here. Yeah. And that sort of information is there amongst the public sector. We just need to be better at mining it.
Exactly.
I was just going to add to Will's comment. I think ROSPA, who are based a few miles from here in Edgbaston, are the perfect vehicle to... They have been collating NHS information and slicing and dicing it and making campaigns based on that for a long time. So, good.
Yeah, I think more to be done, but I think we all recognise it's a huge priority. I think we're out of time now, so we'll draw the session to a close. I'd just like to briefly thank all of the speakers for their time, for travelling here today, and